You gotta get me out of here. These guys are crazy. Oh, you can't. See what I'm talking about?
They call us the Trolls, and my family, after a lot of money and a lot of time, as a gift to me for plastic surgery, I'm here to make people laugh, just like they used to laugh at me and call me Troll Boy or Eric Estrada or whatever they called me when I was a kid. And it's revenge. It's all about revenge.
A lot of people have asked me why I'm in Comic Frenzy, and I'll answer you the way I answer all of them. That's none of your business.
It hits me emotionally.
I don't believe it!
That they would choose me because
Tell me again.
it shows to me that I'm funny, and it doesn't matter what everyone else thinks.
I hate you! I don't want you for a sister. Did you ever think of that?
But
Gosh, I already have 19
it's,
sisters. I don't need you.
you know, but it's important that I'm funny, and I'm with these funny people.
I hate you.
Some people had written me, old theater friends had written me and told me about the group and told me I should consider auditioning.
Well, when I first started going to school, it was pretty new, and I first heard about it my first semester, my freshman year.
All of my friends were in it. It sort of started with a group of theater people. Jeff Blake sort of came up with the idea, and they started fooling around after rehearsals for various plays, and it just started to form gradually. And about 2 years later, I auditioned and got in.
And I went and I saw it, and I I felt like, oh man, I really regret not auditioning or not trying out for it, because it was a lot of fun, and it seemed like an outlet, the kind of outlet that I needed at that point, because I was trying to be reserved in all my accounting and business classes and not goof around too much, and I think with my personality I needed an outlet somewhere to screw around, and that seemed like a perfect one.
From what I understand, it started when I was on my mission, and then I went up to Rexburg. January 2004 is when I started up there, and Ben and Jeff Blake and all the most of the founding members were still kind of up there doing it, and my brother was like, "Hey, I've got this brother of mine. He's a pretty good piano guy." So when I got up there, there wasn't really any competition at that time. It was still kind of starting. So I got in there, and I guess I passed the test because I was doing it for a year and a half. So
that was amazing. I remember there was a guy on my mission that could play the piano like that. Like he's a marketing professor now, like Western Michigan. But I remember I was in Florence at the time, and I was like, he would play the piano, and I would like make up stuff, like just make up songs, and like just like stupid songs, like funny songs, right? Like doing comedy and stuff. And I was like, man, I wish we could like incorporate like more music, like musical improv into it. And then come back and like Jeff Parks is just like making like Adam and Jeff are probably the two most talented people ever to be on Comic Frenzy.
I had a few buddies that were in the theater department who were involved in it, and I didn't know anything about it a lot other than it was an improv team. And then actually what happened was my buddy Ryan Wood and I were actually asked by Comic Frenzy to be the MCs for their Halloween show. And we had never seen Comic Frenzy, we had never had anything to do with it, and they wanted us to actually be the master of ceremonies for their Halloween show as part of the big celebration at the Manwaring Center. And so actually that was the first experience I had with Comic Frenzy, was 10 minutes before the show, having the show explained to me, having the games explained to me, and I'd never done improv before. And so it was a really interesting night to try and run a show and know when to call the games and everything, having never even seen a Comic Frenzy show before.
Yeah, he ended up doing, he was more involved. We started thinking like, we really should get together and like rehearse and, do stuff. And so we did that, but even then I wasn't as good at it as everybody else was. Brant was. And we were friends in high school, so we were kind of attached to the hip for a lot of this stuff, and we did a lot of theater at BYU Idaho. But he was just kind of better at it, and we both hosted for a while. But if memory serves, after a while, I think it was just me, because people had their games that they were good at, and they had a better time doing that. So I kind of just knew my place, and so I that's what I did.
I don't know. I was a little reluctant. I didn't know if it would be my thing. I love theater, but to some degree, theater was just a little too much attention grabbing and in your face, and I kind of was a little reserved.
I was friends with everyone who started Comic Frenzy. I guess they probably had been going for a semester, maybe a year or something before I joined in with them, and then I was in that weird fearless phase of life where you're just like, I can do everything and I can be everything and I'm gonna do this. And I had never done improv before in my life, but I was like, I can do it because I'm amazing and I know how to do all the things. So I auditioned for it, and honestly, my audition was terrible. I don't know how the audition process is now for it, but ours, it was basically just get the group together and we all played a bunch of jump-in games, like just start a game and people jump in when they have something to contribute. And I had 0 things to contribute for the entire audition. And then the very last game we were playing, I was right about to jump in and they were like, okay, we're done on that game. And I was like, no, wait, I have a thing. I have one thing. So I literally got in on one joke, which is weird to me, but I think it's because my friends trusted me, which I don't know if that was wise on their part.
At first I was a little nervous. I was nervous because I didn't know a lot of the people. But then once we started playing these games, I was like, these people are just like me, just they're goof-offs, and it became really easy to become myself with them.
I mean, at first it was just a bunch of people who were very talented at improv. There was not a lot of structure to it at all because it was just a bunch of people having a good time. We would coordinate mostly with the school just for the venues and getting the word out for it. I mean, I remember we had it once in I don't know, it was just like some side room at the Manwaring Center, and then it turned into like a ballroom. And then we wound up just having it over and over again in theaters, like in the Curlin Theater. And we were learning a lot. Like there was which venue was better? Was it better to have everyone just like sitting in folding chairs in a room? Was it better to have everyone elevated in a theater sort of stadium seating style thing?
When we first started Comic Frenzy, it was under just like the general clubs.
We were trying to do shows off campus at one point. Now that actually reminds me, I do think there was a time where we were like, well, we can just do shows off campus. Like we don't need to do them on campus. So there must have been something that brought that on. It might have been that
that clubs thing had kind of morphed into BYU activities. It was pretty it was like a tenuous relationship until we just kind of got locked out basically for a little while, for a semester.
We came back and Jeff said, if it's not broken, let's just keep doing the same thing. So that's when it was reported we had done something questionable or inappropriate, which we hadn't, but that got us shut down for a while. So I thought we should start doing some new games, and we ended up playing off campus in the meantime at the Underground. And I figured out who I was comedically at that point. It was kinda punk rock, because we were really selling out these shows. Also, this was the only time where we as players got actual money for performing in Comic Frenzy.
Because some people were trying to pull it in the direction of being like a business, like comedy sports, So the first year that it started, people were trying to get us like off-campus shows or rent a space where we would charge and we would like take home the money that we made. And we did a couple of those shows where 35 people would come and they'd pay $2, and then after we paid for the space, all of us would go home with 85 cents, or something.
I remember, we did shows at the Underground, which was like a place that was like, I'm sure they've turned it into like 50 apartments now, but it was like a cool like underground club, and those shows were amazing, and we all made like $20 each. We were like passing out $20 bills at the end. We're like, oh my gosh, we're rich.
We weren't allowed to be on campus for our shows, but we were still practicing, and our schedule was pretty much the same, and we would still we'd still try to do like a show a month or a couple of shows a month, a weekend a month, if we could get a gig somewhere. So it was fun. I mean, I'd rather be on campus doing it. There's also like a sense of convenience there. Is a little bit trickier if we had to drive somewhere. I remember going to Pocatello to do a show. So it made things a little more complicated.
It's kind of like they just did it. They formed this troupe and didn't really ask permission, and it almost felt punitive from the activities, whatever, afterward. Like, no, you have to have our permission to do this.
But I remember thinking it seemed a little unorganized. Had a lot of potential, I thought, but frankly, Ryan and I had a good time, but we were a little upset at how much on the spot we were, and how we kind of had to pull it out of nowhere to try and get the show pulled off. But I left for the summer, came back in the fall, and by then a lot of my buddies were saying, James Best and Jeff Blake, one of the co-founders, those two were saying to me, you really ought to audition, you really ought to do it. And I said, I have no idea if I'd be any good at improv. I've never done it before. I don't even know if I'm funny. And they said, no, you should just do it. You should just do it. So my first impressions were very much of some exciting things there. It sounded pretty cool, and I didn't, was kind of interested, but at the same time, I didn't know if I wanted to be a part of something that was so kind of crazy and unorganized. So
obviously, what makes me a good improviser makes me a bad leader. I was also like 22, and I had that ego where you're like, well, I don't care, it's my group. Like me and John came up with it. John went off as a mission, so it was just me. And then like everyone who was in that first group obviously felt like some ownership, like, oh, we created this group together, which totally makes sense. I have no problem with that. But I was very much like, well, it's kind of like the group that I started, so I should be the leader. And I remember, and that was very much my ego at the time, and not admitting like, oh, I need to be better at administration stuff, and I need to remember dates and not show up 10 minutes late. I need to be good at all this stuff, and I was not good at it. I was good at improv. I wasn't good at it administrating.
I left for my Mormon mission for 2 years, and then when I came back, Comic Frenzy had a new constitution, so everybody was in charge, and there was just kind of a new organization structure, which was really good.
Comic Frenzy has been through a lot of growing pains, and there's something about it at its core, I think, that keeps it alive. I think the fact that it's always been it's always kind of relied heavily on students taking responsibility.
Lots of weird stuff happened while I was gone. There was like all Comic Frenzy drama. And so then when I came back, had to actually audition again. I had to audition for the group I started.
I think at the time I was very upset about it. And I look back now and I go, obviously the group needed some better administration. And I think John, he's a lawyer now. So like that first year, John was probably pretty good at like keeping things in order. And James was always good at keeping things in order.
No, it was funny. No, it was funny because I got back and I saw James Best at Quiznos of all places, and he was like, "Hey, John, oh yeah, Comic Frenzy's going pretty good. You're gonna have to audition, but you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it. Everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. Things are different now." So it was.
At first, it was democratic, but maybe in a poor way, in the fact that everybody kind of had their say, and it was kind of generally. John Gagnon, who was the other co-founder with Jeff Blake, was on his mission at that time. He'd started the group, been on it for a semester or two, and then left on his mission, and so Jeff was the boss, and Jeff was great, but eventually the team reached a point. How do I say this diplomatically? The team reached a point where it needed a better way of running, rather than just kind of relying on Jeff's leadership alone. And so James Best and I began to kind of brainstorm about how we might structure some sort of organization, some sort of organizing document, some sort of governmental structure or whatever. And so through that, I ended up writing what was called the Comic Frenzy Constitution, and then got that approved. And so essentially it turned into a coup d'etat of Jeff, where we basically as a team said, we love you, Jeff, we want you to be on the team, but we don't think just because you founded the team, we don't think that gives you the right to be the one making all the decisions. We'd like to have a say in what goes on.
I just remember at the time being very upset about it. James's girlfriend, Valerie, and I had a huge fight one time where she and James, she wanted to be involved, helping with administration, because I'm sure she saw a need there. And we went into the big Kirkham auditorium one time, and we were just like, I was like, I don't care if this group even continues. Like, it's my group. I don't know. And then she was like, really, Jeff? That's really shows your true colors. And I was like, I'm being stupid and I'm being egotistical, and I don't want the group that I started and put a lot of hard work into to be ripped from my hands.
It was, the things got intense sometimes during rehearsal or during class, and with the different personalities, but it was cool to see how that made us successful, to have different ideas.
This is my thing. No, it's mine. Leave it alone. So I was very, I didn't know I didn't have a right to be upset about it. Maybe I did. I don't know.
Because there was a lot of frustration in terms of how people made the team, and people were kind of sometimes just asked to be on the team, and other people were kicked off the team for no reason, and auditions were kind of, we held them, but they didn't really mean a lot, and so there was just a lot of gray areas that needed to be cleaned up, and frankly, we were becoming more and more known, and so we wanted to make sure our quality was getting better, and so we adopted the Constitution and changed the way leadership worked, and then what we did was we basically rotated leadership every semester with an artistic director, or with 3 presidents is what it was originally. 3 presidents, and then everybody had different jobs assigned to them that they would do, and then those 3 presidents would kind of make sure that they would be in charge. And so that kind of fixed the problem and didn't really fix the problem, and I guess I'm talking more structurally.
They tried to create a constitution, and I think that was really Brandt's brainchild. And I remember there was some pushback against that, specifically with Jeff Blake and Nathan Lowe. I think Nate had taken a semester off, and then he came back, and because of the way the Constitution was worded, that he had to audition to get back on the team, and he thought that was really ridiculous and stupid.
They formed sort of a committee where Valerie was sort of the president somewhat, and there was some struggles between power, and one of the main issues with Comic Frenzy was it became such a success that it was the most profitable basically event on campus.
Maybe some hard feeling about that transition of taking out of the hands of Jeff, who created it, and making it a democracy, so to speak.
And even though there was some kicking and screaming at the beginning when Valerie came in, or whoever it was, Brant and Valerie and James were making like this constitution, I was annoyed at first, and then eventually I was like, oh, this is running more smoothly. So,
I always went to rehearsals and I always followed the schedule, but I also, I didn't sign up for a leadership role. So whenever they would be like, oh, we're trying to organize this, or we're trying to do this, I would be like, okay, fine, do that then, and just tell me how it turns out. So I don't know very much about, the organization, or who was in charge of what, or how it went down. So I can't talk about that very much because I never paid attention and I didn't care. I was just like, okay, well, just, tell me where to be and when. And I promise I'll be there 5 minutes early, but I'm not going to make any decisions.
I think a lot of the things in the Constitution were things that I was frustrated with. So it was definitely like, oh yeah, this Constitution is good because people are not showing up for rehearsal, and and then they expect to be in the show. So that was something that was happening a lot. Like oh, I only came to one rehearsal this month, but I still want to be in the show. It's like, well, you didn't really put forth the effort to be there.
You had to be at the practices, like the Tuesday, Thursday practices, immediately before our weekend shows in order to be in the shows, just so that we can, be fresh on cue or whatever, so that, we didn't really miss out on a whole lot of stuff. It was something like that, but eventually we tried to, provide some of that flexibility while still maintaining, everybody kind of going through and staying sharp.
Our intention the whole time, we talked about it all the time, was how we wanted this thing to outlive all of us. And so we tried to set it up in a way that it could be self-sustaining, and turnover we tried to build an institution as pompous as that might sound, that would continue to exist.
And there were people who were in plays and stuff like that, which we totally understood. So most of our talented actors were in plays. They wanted to do plays, and that was great. But there was literally one show where 8 of us were doing a play, and there was 4 of us who did an improv show. It was not good. There was a lot of frustrating things, but putting the Constitution together, I don't remember all that.
It wasn't without its problems, though, especially in those early days where we didn't always see eye to eye on the way that the team should be run. And we came up with a Constitution eventually, and I think that helped iron out a lot of the problems that a lot of us had. I was always very quiet and never got into the discussions, but I remember sometimes feeling frustrated after a rehearsal, being like, man, I think we talked more than we did work today, you know what I mean? And what really frustrated me was that it would be the talk would start to be we'd pick up where we left off. We never solved anything. We always just went around and around.
It was one thing that J.D. Taylor, and he was kind of, if I remember correctly, he was sort of the driving force behind this. But when things were notably not funny, like or they were awkward because somebody had people were butting heads, or somebody was frustrated with somebody else in a rehearsal. He would sort of like kick off this thing where it would just devolve into chaos. Like he would basically just he'd pull out like a mock chainsaw and he'd start cutting somebody in half, and then everybody started like pretending to murder each other. And it was a way of breaking the tension that he did. And I remember I was always quick to jump in as soon as something like that happened. I was like, yeah, let's be chaotic. This is fun. And so we would do that. I would just go around kicking everybody in the crotch, pretending to kick them, stuff like that. And it just sort of devolved into chaos. And then it sort of broke up the tension, and then we had fun.
And in the rehearsals, I was always very quiet, but I know Bryce Cramner and I would sometimes meet together for lunch, and Comic Frenzy would come up, and then we'd both rant about, all the talking, and we'd get fired up about it, but kind of passive aggressive of us. But things worked out though. That's those memories of that kind of frustration was more in the early days. I think it's just because we didn't know what we were doing, and we didn't know what we had.
But I remember being like, oh, you guys put together a constitution without me. That's weird. But it was also stuff that I was frustrated about, so it was good in the end. It's just the way it was gone about, I didn't appreciate. Let's put it that way.
I was president of the theater council at the time of the inception of Comic Frenzy, and I was friends with all those people. So, while 100% Jeff and John took the lead on getting it up and going, and I believe Omar was the person, because he was the faculty member that was the liaison for theater council.
So yeah, I actually told them, I think it was John Gagnon and Jeff Blake who began it, and that was, it has to be 20 years ago. And I told them, I said, you guys should come over here because we've got facilities for you. And at that point, in those days, those good old fun days back then, when before the clampdown came, we did so many cool things, student produced things that I continue to do most of my career there. And so I wasn't involved in any way, shape, or form in the structure of Comic Frenzy. I just said, come on over and let us support you, and they did very well through the theater department.
We did have conversations within theater council about how to sort of start this and implement it. And so I was a part of those conversations prior to actually being in it.
Comic Frenzy provides a different alternative for BYU Idaho entertainment. Just over 2 years ago, student Jeff Blake started up Comic Frenzy because nobody else had done it yet at BYU Idaho. Now Comic Frenzy performs for sold-out audiences on a regular basis. It's gotten so big that posters like this one, advertising the shows, are hard to find. Once they're put up, people start taking them down and collecting them like baseball cards.
Some of my favorite things, and I have them up in my kids' wall, but the Comic Frenzy posters that Michael Allhead did, just the art is just, and they're funny. We have a lot of funny ones, like the gnome one, and the Mother's Week one, where it's just they have the hoses and flowers are spilling out. Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous. I love that one. We've got a Comic Frenzy Killed the Dinosaurs in my kids' rooms. I don't know. Yeah, love those.
James Best is my brother-in-law, and I had moved into the same apartment complex. So I met James right when he got to school. Was it still Rick's College? No, I think it had just changed to BYU Idaho. And I became friends with him and his sister kind of at the same time. And so when I'm not sure exactly timeline-wise when Comic Frenzy was starting, but when that was happening, I was hearing about it some from him because I was, dating his sister, and also, we were doing things together. So it's all through James. I've always been an artist and everything. So I was doing illustrations, and that's how James, got me started. Is they needed posters to advertise their shows, and I'm not sure what they did before he asked me.
We had this very exciting poster, which is Comic Frenzy is coming, and that was the intended result, is that we wanted to scare people into coming. And then this was we did auditions. I don't remember how exactly, but it's our very exciting. I made this really awful poster, which I thought I was really good at Photoshop, and it's not great. It's definitely the poster of a college improv troupe, before graphic design really got easier.
I mean, then we got really great advertising. I can't remember who it was that drew up those posters, but we had a guy that would just put up some of the coolest artwork for our shows.
That, mostly it was James saying, "Hey, could you make a poster for us?" And me asking, "Well, what do you want on it?" And he said it just has to say Comic Frenzy, and the time, and the place, and the price. And he said, and nothing else matters what's on there, it's eye-catching or whatever. And so I worked on several of these with Tyson Schenk, and that might be one that Tyson drew. I'm trying to remember. So Tyson's a graphic designer. He's an apparel designer. He designs hoodies for several different apparel companies. He's done them over the years, Abercrombie and Fitch and Converse, and anyway, all those. So there were. And I was in several classes with him. We worked really well together. There were some where I drew some things and then he colored them or did typography on them. And there were some that he drew things and then I colored. And I think that Care Bear one was one where he initially drew the Care Bears in his style. And then I took it in Photoshop and was coloring things, I think. There's a couple of them that I got into the Society of Illustrators student competition, which is a national illustration competition. I got two pieces of them when I was a student, and they were both Comic Frenzy posters that I did. And I was wondering, I think that gnome might have been one of them. I think that gnome thing, I was looking at Mr. T, and then I just kind of wanted to, it's like, if I, stylized and simplified Mr. T, but also made him a gnome, how could I do those shapes together? And really, he said, hey, we are selling out every show. So these posters are just to tell people when they are. Like, it doesn't really, it made me feel better that I didn't have, compared to, say, work I've done for clients since then, where they're like, hey, we're really trying to sell this. It needs to look like this and this and this. It was really freeing, that they were just saying, hey, I'm going to pay you $20. Can you do this for tomorrow? And I just had to pop off whatever ideas I had and whatever else I was trying in class, and it was something I had to do really quick. And it was actually helpful to me artistically, because some people don't do well under that kind of pressure, and I realized that it makes me kind of think outside the box sometimes, or just realize that thing that popped in your head visually, whatever it is, Mr. T is a gnome, just try it, and you got to finish something.
Student Chad Busaith has been coming to shows since the beginning because it makes him laugh.
I come, it's hilarious. I watch Whose Line Is It Anyway all the time, but for some reason these guys make me laugh harder.
The performance starts with an MC warming up the crowd. Then the announcer introduces the cast and the games begin. Games vary from short scenes to longer so-called plays.
I will grant you 3 wishes. That's awful nice of you.
The crowd has the opportunity to participate during the show. The MC asks them for ideas to set up characters for the games. Comic Frenzy members hope that people that go to the shows can laugh and relax.
We basically learned how to make comedy more realistic, because realistic is the most humorous kind of comedy. So.
And the team just got better and better. We got more and more talented people on the team, and the sense of, group mind became really almost psychic in some ways, because we worked with each other for so many years. that, you know, like I knew if I was in a scene with JD and Andy that it was going to go well, and I could almost know what they would need from me. And I think they knew, like, if they could they'd see a look in my eye, like, oh, Trevor's got something, and I would go with it, and then and it was just a wonderful feeling of camaraderie, especially on stage. And like I said, it was a really unique feeling to be like, okay, I'm in a scene with Christian and Jeff. Great, I'm so excited. You know, I can't remember there ever being a time like, I don't want to be in a scene with so-and-so.
The friendships that we have that have lasted that long, and it's truly a brotherhood and a sisterhood, you know, like those who I've performed with in those very early stages of Comic Frenzy are still some of the dearest friends and people that I just absolutely love and adore. Yeah.
With Jessica and Cam, or I'm with Brant and Darren, or I'm with Brady or you know, Christian or something, or Jeff or John, Ben. Just couldn't wait. Sarah, all those guys. I mean, loved being in all of those scenes with those guys, and couldn't wait to get back on stage with them.
I think it is remarkable that it kind of flew under the radar because there was such an environment where students were given power to create and do, compared to like BYU and Provo, when, you know, you have graduate programs and research and you know, it's more top down, the activities, and more competitive that way. I didn't think that there was nearly as much opportunities to create things like there was at BYU Idaho. So yeah.
I feel like there was a lot of student generation of just like activities and events, and we were all hungry for something, like whether it was comedy, whether it was being the funniest person in the room, we all wanted something, and we wanted it bad. And we were out there producing our own things. Like, I don't know if they still do the film festival there anymore, but I started that. So yeah, that was fun and crazy. And the awesome thing about that era was that they let us. Like, I don't remember a whole lot of resistance. I remember a lot of guidance and rules, and you guys need to do this and that, and, you know, we'd be like, okay, fine, we'll do it. But after BYU Idaho, I actually went to another school, and they boasted like having a lot of good student-driven projects. But when I tried to put on a play, which is something we did at BYU Idaho all the time, like we were putting on full plays, I was met with just complete resistance. The guy that I talked to, he very much was like, we don't think you can. It's a full play. Do you not understand what goes onto a play? Like, how do you think you're going to do this? And I was just flabbergasted, because I was like, I came from a world that encouraged us to think like this and to create these moments for ourselves. And now you're not even going to let me try it. Like, it wasn't even, okay, try and you'll probably fail. It was like, no, we don't want you. We don't think you can do this. So it was amazing just how much room they gave us to just explore these creative fields.
Even myself, not even, measuring myself to them, I'm like, how did I even get the chance to be a part of this group? I just am grateful for it.
I remember one show in particular that we had waiting to get into the show. The crowd was lined up at the door, and it went all the way down the hallway, down the stairs, like through 2 floors of the Manwaring Center, and then like out the door. And it was nuts. So I took my phone and I took pictures of the whole thing. But it was back when like you couldn't get your pictures off your phone. Like, they were just on that phone forever. So I have the phone somewhere, but I can't.
100% did not audition for Comic Frenzy. Which they may have regretted ultimately later, but best friend, still my best friend, is Valerie, who made Comic Frenzy run like 100%. really good friends with Jeff at the time, and all like 99.9% of that cast, and already just sort of pushed myself into, like, I was at all the shows, I was helping out set up, and whether or not I was needed, I sort of was just involved because those were my people, those were who I was hanging out with and spending all my time with, regardless of whether Comic Frenzy was happening or not. So I think I just sort of weaseled my way in, to be honest with you, and, you know, zero regrets. I got a super cool shirt out of it, and I had a great time.
You know, there was something special about that group of people, and the way that they clicked, and kind of the energy that was there, that was something special that I haven't really been able to find in any other place. So I think it's, you know, it's more than an improv troupe. It was something special.
Like, it was always really cool for Mother's Weekend when we're out in, like, you know, the main theater, and like there's like 400 people or 500 people there, and it's like filled to the brim or whatever, and it like the tickets, like, you better get it like the day they go on sale, or you don't get them. Like, that was always like really cool for us, right? Like, we're always thinking like, man, that is amazing. Everybody's always wanting something to do with their moms, and the only thing to do is Comic Frenzy, so everybody goes.
Cinderella, however, was very naive about the way it falls, and she expected this.
Mirror, mirror, on the wall, I'll marry the guy who brings the ball to the ball.
Usually people ask the mirror for advice. Cinderella, being a product of women's lib, told
But, like, that being said, like, my favorite times is, like, my favorite performing spot is in the black box, right? Because then, like, we're like, either we're down there, like, on the floor with everybody around us, or, you know, we're just barely up, you know, on one of the walls, and we've got 3 sets of people around us, and and we're always just performing down with people, like that intimacy there, like, even, and like, you may only have like 60, 70 people in there, maybe 100 or whatever they fit, but the energy was just as high as it could be, you know, with like 500 people.
Yeah, you know, I used to get tons of scholarships to different colleges, Notre Dame, Duke, all these places play basketball. But I saw this Comic Frenzy program here, and I thought it was, you know, my game. You know what I mean? Throw out those shots, you know, throw them out on the comedy floor. That's why I accepted. It's, you know, it is a game. There's no gimmicks, nothing. We're dead serious.
What a lot of people don't know is that I'm actually the brains. Stop. I'm actually the brains, the talent, and the humor behind Comic Frenzy. There was a benefit dinner for award something attendees, and we did like a warm-up little show for them, and I do remember that show went very poorly. The people there were like, they were there to have dinner and get some awards, and they were like, what is this improv show? This is not what we wanted. So they were not into the show. We did a poor job because the audience was just like, obviously didn't want us there. And then we did get some complaints after that they were like, well, you're not funny, and you're just up there like being funny for yourself. And I remember being like, oh, that's about the worst criticism I've ever gotten in my life.
The only thing I remember being frustrated about was, really, it was faculty. It was kind of this over, in my opinion, prudish, shall we say, thing of, oh, we can't make light of ourselves, or we can't make light of anything, really. We have to take things so seriously. And I remember one of the rehearsals we were doing, and I made fun of big Mormon vehicles, BMW, or big Mormon wagons or whatever, BMWs, you know. And we had the dean there, I don't remember his name, but he was the dean of the College of Arts. And he was like, oh, we should not make fun of that. We should not make fun of families like that. And I was like, making fun of families? What are you talking about? I was like, I come from a big family. I'm proud of my family, but I'll make fun of the fact that we're a big family any day. I'll make fun of myself all day. Like, you know, it was very ridiculous. That's what I remember us always coming against, was that kind of a thing of like, well, it's not God's way to be silly and whatever.
You know, life is hard, but comedy, as it says in the Family Home Evening Manual under the comedy section, comedy is like the pressure valve on a pressure cooker that can help with life and dealing with these things. And that's why all of us came together, was because we had all experienced these hard, devastating things. And we all had that one thing that brought us all together, which was comedy.
One of Rexburg's most prized landmarks was in danger of being closed forever until a group of volunteers took matters into their own hands. Our Diana Nguyen has more.
Todd, I'm here in front of the Romance Theater, where volunteers are working hard to bring this once booming vaudeville theater back to life. In its heyday, the Romance Theater in Rexburg was the place to go on a Friday night.
So there are a lot of memories here. Almost anyone you talk to who has lived here during the time that this theater was open has a memory from being inside this theater.
But after several years in the Teton Dam flood of 1976, this theater was forced to close its doors in 2001. Now hoping to revive it, the Save the Romance Theater community, made up of community volunteers, is renovating the theater with the help of Hampton Hotel's Save the Landmark program. Chairman of the Romance Theater Committee, Ronald Lee Flansburgh, says they won't be playing any new blockbuster movies. Rather, they're hoping to bring it back to what it once was.
It's about vaudeville theater. All kinds of things have been in here, silent movies. So it has a lot of rich history, and we're hoping to continue and make this a magical place for our community.
Stephen Zollinger, who was born and raised in Rexburg, says he recalls going to the Romance Theater in his youth and even married a woman he frequently brought on dates to the theater.
I can talk about the courtship of my wife. She was a BYU Idaho, or at that time Ricks College student, and this was where every date seemed to end up a movie and dinner. I have a lot of fond memories of this theater. As I said, I ended up marrying the girl that I dated here most often, so it was a nice feeling.
Zollinger says he hopes the theater lives on and continues to build memories for his family.
My girls love it. They come every year and they sit in the theater and they watch the progress as it gets better and better, and they're optimistic that they'll be able to bring their kids here some year.
We're just hoping that the community will feel like this is their place. We want everyone to feel like that they're welcome here and that they're part of it.
City officials say that because the renovations are being done solely by volunteers, they don't yet have a set date for when it will be completed. Reporting in Rexburg, I'm Diana Nguyen with KPVI News 6. Todd, I'll send it back to you in the studio.